Good morning. I'm David Nash. This is the monthly meeting of the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee focused on coordinating our continuum of care for homeless services in the Asheville-Buncombe community. I apologize for the mask. My spouse has COVID. So far I'm testing negative, but I'm taking precautions for your protection. So welcome. We'll do the roll call. David Bartholomew. Here. Sorry, David Nash here. Lance Crawford.
Here.
Jamie Benshoff.
Here.
Sarah Copley.
Here.
Elvia Diaz.
Here.
Rick Freeman.
Here.
Lacey Hoyle.
Here.
Claire Hubbard. Tricia Killian.
Here.
Marcus Laws.
Here.
Dustin Mailman. Tim McElroy. Celeste Ordaway.
Here.
Joelle Steininger.
Here.
Liaison Kim Roney. All right, we have a quorum with 3 members currently absent. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at the minutes? And if so, can I have a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve.
Everybody remember to speak into your mic. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So our community value for this month is maintaining fidelity to data and evidence. Data will help guide all decisions in program funding, policy, and system design changes. As part of this commitment, the COC will employ quality services which reflect the COC community values. To promote quality services, the COC will provide training and evidence-based approaches, including housing first, trauma-informed care, cultural competency, and harm reduction across the service delivery system. Any discussion on this item?
We just had some discussion about, and I realize this is a little different. It's shared values and guiding principles. The values and voice of the people with lived experience. And I don't necessarily think that we need to go over it in full today. I know we have a lot on this docket, but I want to read it. The COC will invest through coaching and mentoring and leadership development for people with lived experience. And I'm going to stop there. I don't need coaching. And I feel like I'm a coach for people who don't have lived experience. And so I want that rephrased because I am a team leader. I contribute greatly. And you cannot do this work without me because this work is about me. So I think, with all due respect, we are in this together. We are all in the same boat. There are many people who are one day away from being homeless. And I just want that rephrased to reflect this work and how it is done. And yeah, I think this just needs to be rephrased and to reflect how this work is to be done as a whole.
Thank you. Can we put that on the agenda for next month to rephrase that goal?
Yes.
Or to work on it, have a small group work on it between now and then, make sure that your concerns are incorporated.
Please.
Definitely, we can add that to the agenda, and I'll thank you, Elvia, for bringing that up, and I'll just add that the governance work group has identified a couple of other recommendations for updating the community values, so maybe that can be a kind of a comprehensive agenda item next month that we can talk about the other suggested changes as well.
Any other comments about of our community values. All right. Homeless Strategy Division updates.
Good morning, again. Just a couple of updates from us. I know we have a big agenda today. Do you want to go on down? At the last meeting, we looked at the coordinated entry equity analysis for our coordinated entry analysis, which included some demographic information about folks who had been slated for housing interventions over the past fiscal year, and the outcome of that process for those folks. That was specific to the non-veteran part of our coordinated entry system, because the veteran part hadn't been tracking that demographic data in the same way. We are doing that now as of July 1st. So we'll be able to look at those as kind of apples to apples next year. But you all had asked about veteran demographic data from the past year. So this is just a follow-up to that question. This, again, note that this is not specific to the coordinated entry system because we hadn't been tracking in that way for veterans, but this is overall HMIS enrollment. So it includes all SSVF and HUD-VASH program participants in that, again, that same time period. So July 1st of last year through June 30th of this year. Overall HMIS enrollments as compared to the point in time data. This is, again, just information to answer that question from last meeting, but we're happy to answer any follow-up questions if you have them. Hearing none, we can go on to the next brief update. Code Purple planning is underway for the coming winter. We have a good group that's already begun that planning process. We've had a couple of meetings so far. We have another one scheduled this week. And one change this year is that group is going to continue to meet throughout the Code Purple season so that we have some ability to just keep tabs on how things are going and identify anything that we might need to tweak operationally as we go along, which I think will be helpful. We have 2 shelter partners in Code Purple this year. ABCCM is providing 75-plus beds, and Salvation Army is providing 16-plus beds. That plus just meaning that the 75 and the 16 are kind of baseline, and then they have the ability to flex as needed. And this is just a brief update today since planning is still underway, but we intend to provide a full comprehensive update at the October meeting. We should have the Code Purple manual finalized by then, so we'll be able to share that out with the community, share that with you all. And then also at the October meeting, we hope to have the funding allocations work group making recommendations about Code Purple funding based on the budgeted funds at the city and county for that purpose. The notice to submit funding requests went out yesterday, and the funding allocations work group will meet on the 26th to review any requests received, and then again, we'll make recommendations at the October meeting. So just to say, Code Purple is well on its way and should be up and running by October. Does anyone want to add to that? Saying anyone, but I'm looking at you.
I know you are.
Okay. Last update from me, and I don't have a slide for this, but I have staff appreciation for Catherine Ellington on our team. Wanted to share with you all that Catherine is going to be leaving us in a week, not even a week. Catherine is going to be moving out of the area to be closer to family, and so I just wanted to take a minute and really express my appreciation, our team's appreciation for everything that Catherine has done while she's been with us in this role. It's been really wonderful to have her background in behavioral health in particular. That's such a big piece of the work that we all do, and it's been great to have her perspective on our team. She has a lot of information that the rest of us don't have. She has a lot of good relationships and really well built out network in our community and good understanding of that piece of the equation. So we will certainly miss her and just want to express appreciation for everything that she's done in her time with us.
Plus, she knows where the water fountain is on this one.
Invaluable source of information.
Grasshopper.
Okay. So we're to the continuum of care funding application. I'm going to make some brief preliminary comments and then be quiet. The subcommittee had recommended some reallocation of funding, essentially moving 2 rapid rehousing applications up into Tier 1 and moving 2.5 of the existing permanent supportive housing applications down into Tier 2. And Jenny Becker is here to talk about the adverse impact that will have on existing clients who are currently housed and receiving case management in our community. I'd like for her to be heard on that issue. Speaking not in my role as chair, but I've asked the subcommittee this. At least we would request that the homeward bound rapid rehousing application, which we had envisioned going into Tier 2 anyway, just in case, be moved to the very bottom of Tier 2 so that those other existing clients will not be harmed. With that statement, I am going to ask that the committee allow me to recuse myself from this vote, and I think Marcus will make the same motion because we are representatives of Homeward Bound. And I need a motion and a second to allow that.
Motion to allow Marcus and David to recuse themselves from the vote.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can I interject briefly? I just got a notice that it's really hard to hear on the live stream right now, so if you all can just be sure that you're really speaking clearly into your microphones, that will be helpful.
So are we going to hear from Jenny, or what's our next step? Are we ready to discuss the consolidated presentation, or? I do think that for context for the meeting, the discussion is the homeward bound application specifically is what David is referring to. Nothing about the helpmate applications. He would like to move number 6 on Tier 1, COC bonus rapid rehousing 2, down to the bottom of Tier 2, under permanent supportive housing 3. It was originally approved on Tier 1 from the funding allocations group from 129,970. Given David's discussion, David Bartholomew, Elvia Diaz, who are also funding allocations work group members, we would support that change, not given the understanding of how it would harm permanent supportive housing for others. The only caveat to that is we have 2 work group members who are not part of HIAC. One who's given her permission clearly to support all the decisions today. The only caveat I would give is to allow the other work group member to comment on today's proceedings, and if there are any, if she has any major concerns, that we revisit this to the group.
I'll share that we are certainly able to receive any comment, but we do need a vote today in
Sure.
order to meet the HUD deadline. So if she's able to provide comment during the meeting, perhaps that's something you all could consider, but we would need a decision today in this meeting.
So it's unfortunate we didn't have all the complete information. I feel confident, having attended several meetings of this group, that if we had the information, our recommendation would be different. I do think, out of respect for the committee's work, we should present this as this is the recommendation of the full work group. But I think we have 3 members of the 5-member committee, and we would support these changes. I believe I certainly would. If we had known this would directly and immediately affect homeward bound clients, I'm quite sure we would have done a different thing. And our recommendation doesn't have to be followed by this body, so the work group's recommendation. So I think we could, take the three committee members' willingness to change this, and we could decide to, amend it and alter and do something slightly different than what was recommended from the group. And that's what I would think we should do.
Any HIAC committee votes no about this decision for us to move this rapid rehousing down to the bottom due to Homeward Bound's funding constrictions? No. So I'll take that as support of that. So this is the slate. There are documents on the website regarding the decisions of the funding allocations work group, met weekly. They reviewed these applications over Labor Day weekend at length. We had presentations from agencies. Thank you very much for taking the time to do that. Understanding that this glitch at the end is something that we can work out. We also had feedback from Helpmates Director during public comment on how to refine the process in the future, which we would definitely recommend to HIAC. So, Lance, I'm going to present this to you as the recommended slate with the agreed upon changes for HIAC's decision to vote on today.
I understand there's, Jenny, you'd like to provide comment?
Thank y'all. I think the majority of what I wanted to speak to has already been addressed. Just with the change in ranking, this would allow us to protect some of our clients who are currently housed who would be at jeopardy of losing their housing if we were to lose subsidy and lose case management. So with the $350,000 that Homeward Bound has in Tier 2, that would potentially affect 29 households who are currently in housing who would lose that subsidy and potentially lose case management. Right now, there's not many options in our community for these folks. These are our most acute neighbors. And so I just want to be the voice for them to say that this is really critical for their housing stability, and we would really hate for any of these folks to end up back outside because we weren't able to continue to provide housing subsidy for them. So thank you for hearing me, and I appreciate y'all considering the change.
Jenny, one question. So we're talking about just moving permanent supportive housing 5 up into the Tier 1 for consideration. Was that your expectation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You'll, with this change, you would be able to move $129,970 of what's currently the $148,257 of permanent supportive housing 5
Yeah.
that's in Tier 2. So there would still, it would keep permanent supportive housing 5 as the straddle project between Tier 1 and Tier 2, but just really reduce the amount that would be in Tier 2.
Thank you for the clarification.
So Sarah, could you, just for clarity's sake, could you just restate what the official recommendation is?
Yes, I sure can.
Yeah.
So the funding allocations work group, sorry about that, recommends that we consider the Tier 1 with the recent change of moving number 6, Homeward Bound, the bonus rapid rehousing to the bottom of Tier 2 based on the agency's funding considerations and needs for the established clients they already have.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. We have a second, so we'll take a vote. David has recused himself. Lance, yes. David Bartholomew.
Yes.
Jamie Benshoff.
Yes.
Sarah Copley.
Yes.
Elvia Diaz.
Yes.
Rick Freeman.
Yes.
Lacey Hoyle.
Yes.
Tricia Killian.
Yes.
Marcus has recused himself. Tim McEllier.
Yes.
Celeste Ordaway.
Yes.
Joelle Steininger.
Yes.
All right, it's been approved.
So sorry, but I need you to do one more vote.
Okay.
So the continuum of care process is called the consolidated application. There's a memo in your meeting materials about this. That has two parts. So you all have just voted on one of those parts, which is the priority listing. The other is the COC application. I think right now you could vote either on the consolidated application as a whole or on the COC application, but we need one of those votes.
Okay. Do I have a motion for that?
I'm sorry, I'm not following. Can you re-explain? I'm struggling today.
It's not you, it's HUD. So this annual application is called the consolidated application, and it has two big pieces to it. So one is this set of project applications, and that's what you all just voted on. The other is called, confusingly, the continuum of care application, and it's that big narrative application, but combined, those are the consolidated application. And you all, as the COC board, have to approve the consolidated application, and then we'll submit based on your approval. So,
I'll make a motion to approve.
For the consolidated application?
Yes.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All right. I'm a yes. David Bartholomew,
Yes.
Jamie Benshoff,
Yes.
Sarah Copley,
Yes.
Elvia Diaz,
Yes.
Rick Freeman,
Yes.
Lacey Hoyle,
Yes.
Tricia Killian,
Yes.
Tim McElroy,
Yes.
Celeste Ordaway,
Yes.
Joelle Steininger.
Yes.
All right, that has been approved.
Thank you for that. We'll reduce the impact, by my calculations, from 29 to about 19 people who will be displaced, so. All right, report group, work group report outs, coordinated entry. Marcus?
Thank you. Okay, since February, coordinated entry work group has met 18 times. In addition to HIAC members, the group included representation from people with lived experience, homeless services, housing providers, sheltering providers, domestic violence services, youth, veteran services, the Homeless Coalition, Buncombe County staff, and City of Asheville staff. During our meetings, we looked at the 4 pillars of coordinated entry, access assessment, prioritization, and referral. Under access, we have identified areas of improvement for our current model, developed and access a framework for future use in our COC, NC 501. That framework includes a hybrid model, which includes a phone hotline in addition to in-person access. Our example that we reviewed for our community was the Orange County access, which included a hotline to community locations that operated during business hours and focused on problem-solving conversations, as a majority of contacts were diverted from coordinated entry and outreach to increase access for people who are unsheltered. The pillar for assessment, we reviewed our work group completed by the former, reviewed work completed by the former coordinated entry work group, identified the need for a progressive process to include assessing vulnerability, assisting existing strengths and housing support needs, confirmed the desire to replace the VI SPDAT. We expressed a commitment to adopt assessments that further equity in our COC, prioritization and referral of people in need of housing. We identified that any replacement should be validated and piloted before widespread adoption in the community. Our example that we reviewed was the NC Balance of State. Recently piloted new assessment, their research and community approaches to the assessment. They evaluated HMIS and prioritization data during the development of the assessment and included research from Duke and UNC to identify vulnerable populations in the regions. Currently, they are in the process of evaluating the data from the pilot phase. For the prioritization pillar, we identified a need for a community by name list to increase collaboration among service providers, improve quality of referrals, and deficiency of prioritization in the community. We submitted for recommendation to HIAC revised prioritization scheme for domestic violence specific to rapid rehousing, with the first priority being people with the highest danger assessment score. Second priority, greatest length of time homeless, measured in months. And the third priority, vulnerability, measured by the VI-SPDAT score. We've also reviewed general population, rapid rehousing prioritization, and improved guidelines to ensure clients are matched with the appropriate level of housing support for long-term stability. PSH is our first priority. Individuals who scored 10 and plus and are chronically homeless are recommended for PSH and prioritized based on length of time homeless. Our second priority for PSH is individuals who score between 5 to 9 and are chronically homeless and are recommended for PSH and prioritized based on length of time homeless. For rapid rehousing, our first priority are individuals who are scored 5 to 9, not chronically homeless, and recommended for rapid rehousing and are prioritized within this group based on length of time homeless. Individuals who score 10 plus and are not chronically homeless will be discussed during case conference to determine the needed level of support and intervention. A score of 0 to 4, the individual is not recommended for a housing intervention at this time and will be referred to appropriate housing and mainstream resources. For the referral pillar of coordinated entry, we have not yet revised due to referral being based around the changes that need to be made in previous pillars that have already been mentioned. Our recommendations for the next phase is that the work group as it is structured be concluded. The second phase will have a broader participation from practitioners as well as oversight body to recommend policy improvements to HIAC. Specifically, we are looking to do a series of work sessions to include our current work group members and members of CAM and VCAM, focused on our community by name list and evaluation of rapid rehousing prioritization and continuous improvement for prioritization, diversion, and infrastructure. We would also like to recommend a coordinated entry subcommittee responsible for convening work sessions and providing updates to HIAC. This group would also draft recommendations for policy adoption. There's a recommendation from the work group that I remain chair of the subcommittee with additional HIAC representatives appointed. We are also recommending that Jerry Kivett-Kimbrough, Sarah Dickerson, and Paige Weber be appointed as community members based on extensive knowledge and experience in coordinated entry.
I'm just wondering out loud, when I was on the shelter work group for taking bids, we received one, I believe it was ABCCM, to do intervention. They wanted funding to set up, for example, in the office, meeting with people and identifying if they can be diverted from the homeless system. It wasn't a grant request that we moved forward on, but we were wondering if that could be a second round of policy implementation. Would that be something that would dovetail with some of your strategic next moves?
Definitely. We've already talked as a work group about community partners that we think would hold weight in being involved with these projects and definitely offer just knowledge from the community, opportunities for people to engage without feeling pressured, non-governmental resources so that people are comfortable as they engage. So it will dovetail, like you said, with the rest of the recommendations that will come out as we begin to work through identifying those members in the community and agencies who would like to participate in the process.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Governance, Lance.
All right, so with the governance work group, our biggest update today is we have a draft charter, which really, really proud of this. It is a draft, so we really, I can't stress that enough, want feedback. And I'll get into the ways that you can provide feedback here in a minute. But I want to thank the work group, the governance work group. We've been meeting about twice a week for quite some time now, and just their dedication to this work and the time and effort, energy they put into this is pretty incredible. So thank you to everyone who has contributed. A couple of notes. We're not going to go through the whole draft charter today, but I will hit some high points. We're reviewing the charter. There are some things outside of the charter that are going to need to be worked on, including the lead agency and HMIS MOU. That's being worked on. More to come on that at a future date. And we're also working on a potential addendum to the charter to give recommendations and working on a transition plan as we move to a new COC. And we're getting technical assistance from HUD on that as well. But to hit a few high points on the charter, the first thing is, I want to jump into page 2, you'll see on the screen, is the full COC membership, which is probably the newest thing in this charter because we don't have that currently. But the full COC membership is the inclusive and diverse body of stakeholders working together to strategically and effectively respond to homelessness in the COC. So members of the COC can be individuals or organizations who have an interest in understanding homelessness and taking action to address it by contributing to the goals of the COC. On page 3, just a few more details about membership. And again, I encourage all HIAC members to go through the full charter to gather feedback. One thing we're incorporating is a member orientation led by the lead agency. Before being able to vote as a member, that will be a requirement. There will also be dues from individuals and organizations. First year that this is in place, we're recommending those dues be waived. And then, of course, dues will always be waived for people with lived experience. Quickly, the rights and responsibilities for members, ability to vote on representative seats on the COC board, ability to vote on officer positions of the COC board, ability to serve as a member of the COC board if elected or appointed, ability to serve on committees as willing and if selected by the board, ability to serve on work groups as willing and if selected by the board or committee, ability to vote on board proposed updates and amendments to the charter, ability to participate in COC provided training, and ability to attend and participate in meetings of the full COC membership, which will be held at least semi-annually. So bringing a lot more people to the table. And last thing on full membership, member organizations have access to a few benefits, including the opportunity to apply for COC or ESG funds and other funding processes managed by the COC, opportunity to have HMIS fees covered, and opportunity to request a letter of support from the COC board. So we'll move on to page 5. So members of the board, I encourage you to review what the responsibilities of board members are. But for board composition, we have 3 sections here. The first one, fixed seats. So these will be held by people in specific roles, which would be the Housing Authority, the City of Asheville representative, Buncombe County staff, City of Asheville staff, and Veterans Administration representative. Representative seats, which would be voted in, a representative from healthcare, behavioral healthcare, local non-governmental funders, subject matter experts with lived experience, 2 representatives, unsheltered service provider rep, interim housing provider rep, permanent housing provider rep, business community, faith community, community member, and supportive provider network representative. And the last section is the non-voting liaisons from Buncombe County Commissioner and City of Asheville Council member. One other note that I won't go into in the charter, but do want to make note of that. One responsibility of the board will be to come up with a standard of care and a grievance process. There'll be a lot of additional duties up front for the board. This will be, in that first year, there's just going to be a significant amount of responsibility that may not be there in years afterwards. All right, so let's go to page 9 and 10. I'll keep this brief. Just page 9 for committees. So the board may create or eliminate committees as needed and may establish committees to conduct board business, including but not limited to planning, priorities, strategies, goals, and implementation. Each committee will have at least one person with lived experience of homelessness, and the board shall appoint all voting members of each committee, including the chair, based on a slate of candidates developed by the nominating and membership committee in partnership with the lead agency. And then the chair of those committees can either be board or full COC members. And just to give a brief rundown of what committees we're recommending, System Performance Committee, which is further down on page 9. And then I'll go to page 10. System Planning and Implementation Committee, Funding Committee, Community Relations Committee, and Nominating and Membership Committee. All right, and the last point on page 11 is work groups. So this will be in addition to committees. Board or committees may create or eliminate work groups as needed, and their primary responsibilities, a little bit further down, is a few things. Serve as the action planning and implementation components of the homelessness system, make recommendations for resolutions regarding COC policies and procedures, review and report outcomes and data analytics, and recommend performance measures and suggestions for system improvements. So those are the main high-level points I wanted to hit on today, but again, I encourage you to go through the charter to provide feedback. You've got a physical copy here today, and then, of course, the PDF is in the meeting materials. But the 3 ways that you can provide feedback, you can mark up the physical copy and give it to Emily. You can download the PDF from meeting materials and either mark that up to email Emily or email her with just an email of questions, comments, concerns on the draft. And then we'll be sending out an email to all HIAC members with a link to Google Doc where you can provide comments that way. So you've got 3 options to provide feedback, which is intentional because we really, really, really want feedback. And I think we're going to give 2 weeks to get that feedback from you. You may get a few reminders because we really do value it. So that's it for me.
Any questions? Thanks to the committee for all the work that's gone into it and for this excellent report. Same to coordinated entry, my apologies, Marcus. Outreach and encampment response.
So here and in the meeting materials is less a policy and more some considerations, and I think a start to what could be an encampment policy for the city and county. Our group has been meeting every other week and at first weekly since the recommendations were made by the NAH. And because we don't have a policy, I think that's why there was a recommendation to do it. And the work group is full of service providers and people with lived experience, and we all were really committed to coming up with something that was better than nothing, and I think we've done that here. One of the frustrations, and I think I've expressed this before to the HIAC, is we just don't have decision makers, and you really do need those people in the room to make a policy, to flesh out the details and the operations of it. And because we don't really have people in the work group from the city, from the county, certainly liaisons have participated and made themselves available and offered feedback, but the decision makers haven't been there. We did solicit feedback from the Asheville Police Department, but we didn't have decision makers in the room. And so what we have here is something that could be a policy if it was fleshed out, if details were added, if those decision makers decided they wanted to embrace some of these things. But I think there's a lot of room to get more feedback from both decision makers and other people in our community. But I do want to, I'm very proud of the work and the commitment of everyone who came, very passionate about this very difficult problem that everyone in the country is facing and our community is facing too. And the very difficult decisions that we have when, we don't have places for people to go. And what are we going to do and how are we going to protect their rights? This policy definitely puts the rights of people experiencing homelessness first. It considers their needs and their health and safety first. But it also, I believe, tries to protect the community and keep those who are concerned about encampments with opportunities to address it. So I'm not going to go through each detail, but I'm happy to take questions. We're not really presenting this for approval next month, but we just want it to be a starting group. It seems like there's going to be some standing committees and also some work groups that might take this policy, hopefully would take this as a starting place to try to flesh out some of those things and figure out who needs to be in the room and how this policy might, be enacted or parts of it might be enacted. So I'm happy to take questions about that. Okay. The only other thing is, our work group has been focused on this work product. Elvia has been there every meeting. And we do want to at least meet one more time just to kind of discuss. But we would like some direction, I think, next month about whether our work group should continue, especially in light of the new governance and the new standing committees. It may be that, this work group, this is what we can do. And outreach was another focus of our group, but it seems like that might be better served. So we may want a decision from this body to wind down the work group at the October meeting. Just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Sorry, there's no written report on shelter. What we did speak, I believe last month or the month before, about our recommendations for funding, and the HIAC adopted those. Those were sent forward to the city, county, and Dogwood Health Trust. And in that, whatever meat grinder approach happened with that, in that conversation, the decision was made that the county and city would focus ARPA dollars on these, on the temporary shelter needs that we recommended be funded. The county has approved, I believe, $875,000 of ARPA funding toward that, and I believe it's on the city council's agenda for this evening. Is that correct? We're very pleased that that part of our recommendation appears to be moving forward, and that we will both maintain and expand the existing low barrier shelter beds in our community. Many thanks to the Salvation Army for their flexibility in doing that, and to the Safe Shelter Group for coming forward with a new model, a refreshed version of an old model, but that will be implemented anew with different churches in the community. That we're hoping that those funds will cover us for about 15 months. The second part of our recommendation was to begin planning process for a new low barrier shelter and combined with other services. And my understanding is that the county manager has asked Lacey Hoyle, our newest HIAC member, to lead that from a staff level at the county with support from all the other county folks who are here in the room, and the county in general, and in collaboration with Emily. I think certainly this committee should continue to receive reports about that. And the county manager also indicated to me that there were some additional models of shelter that they wanted to evaluate. The subcommittee, the work group, evaluated 4 and did interviews with Providence, Rhode Island, Flagstaff, Arizona, Portsmouth, Virginia, or Virginia Beach, Virginia, and Gainesville, Florida. If there are other models, I think the HIAC or an informal gathering of the former work group would be in order to interview those locations and understand what their model is and make policy recommendations to this committee for which model or combination of models we would like the city and county to move forward with. But I think in terms of logistics, like location and other things, I think it's appropriate for us to turn that over temporarily to city and county staff to research further. So I believe that the formal work of the shelter work group is completed, although there may still need to be some informal gatherings to talk about these models going forward. Any questions about that? Sorry for not submitting a written report. My life suddenly got very full here in retirement. So. Funding
Okay, great.
allocations?
Thank you, David. So I'm going to tackle this a little differently. The funding allocations work group was handled very differently this year than it has been in years past. It was because there were 3 HIAC members on the work group, and so all of the meeting materials were public, including the scorecard. The public was invited to come to work group sessions where the scorecard was discussed, what priorities were held by the committee, and I've done grant making for about 10 years plus here. I've never been on a committee where it's been that public and transparent. Made for some uncomfortable conversations for sure, but I can definitely say that barring today's change, the product that was produced was very reflective of the community. It was definitely led by people with lived experience, so no matter how the HIAC board is reconfigured in the future, I would recommend, since we've already gone to the third rail, trying to keep those funding allocation decisions as public as possible. Again, it did make for some uncomfortable conversations, but I felt that the important voices of the service providers were heard and held. So I would recommend that. And I would like to thank Councilmember Roney for suggesting that early on. Instead of changing the work group so that the materials wouldn't be public, we forged ahead, and I think that was some really excellent advice. That said, the funding allocation work group has a couple more things to tackle with Code Purple funding, so please, if you're interested in attending those funding work group allocation meetings, please do. There is time for public comment at the end. Again, keeping with transparency is really important. We'd love to hear from providers in real time about what is needed and what is possible.
Thank you. I do have one question. Is there, for those who applied for funding, is there an opportunity either with the city staff or with the funding committee to have a debrief on things that went well and things that weren't as positive in the evaluation?
Definitely. We discussed that at public comment at the meeting, that we would schedule a debrief session with anyone who's interested in attending. Well, funding work allocation work group members we would hope attend, but that will be held at Pisgah Legal Services, likely at the end of October. We're just trying to work out some space for that, but again, we'll make that public also.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Do we have any public comment? Any other matters to come before the committee? All right, we're adjourned until October 12th at 9 o'clock, same place.